Good morning. So welcome back. This is day 2 of Hashy Days. I'm really excited to be here. A little bit of housekeeping, by the way. I have to race to the airport, probably literally after this. So I can stay to hang out and answer questions for just a little bit, and then I have to run. So we'll be quick today. So let's jump right into it. So this is a different talk today. It's called I Get By With a Little Help from My Friends. And I think I mean that 2 ways, and I'm going to get into both of them in just a second. But first things first, my name is Abby. I work in developer relations for Amazon Web Services. That's kind of a fancy way of saying that I used to be a DevOps engineer or an infrastructure engineer or whatever the cool kids are calling it now. And now I talk to people like all of you about how you can work better with your infrastructure and your systems and your software and things like that. Some of you may have noticed that I talk and tweet about containers quite a lot. And containers are great, so that's why I started using them in production in the first place. There's a lot of benefits, right? They're really portable, they're really flexible, they're pretty scalable, they're easier to work with. But with them, unfortunately, comes quite a bit of another kind of work, right? So scheduling and resource usage and service discoverability and deployments and logging and monitoring and service meshes and how do I log things and how do I observe them and all of that good stuff, right? And this is really hard. It's a lot of things to deal with when really you were moving to containers in the first place because you wanted it to be easier. And even when it is literally your job to keep up with the container space, it can still be really overwhelming. And it seems like every day there's a new project or a talk or a blog or a new tool or an open source project or a video or a tutorial. It's a lot to keep up with. So how are you supposed to keep up? So how are you supposed to parse all of these things? How are you supposed to take care of all this kind of work that goes into using your containers without having to spend kind of all of your time focusing on the housekeeping bits? Because what you really want to be focusing on, right, is how can I just run good applications? How can I do the thing that my business is trying to do? And I had a customer put it to me in really nice terms once. So he worked at TravelX, not just currency exchange. And he said that anything that does not directly enable us to exchange foreign currency is not something that I want to think about, right? So he had one job, so he had a core job, and anything that didn't support him doing that wasn't something that he wanted to worry about. But all this work that goes into containers is something that a lot of people, they don't want to have to worry about. So how do you do this, right? So how do you keep up with that? How do you make all these things happen without spending your whole day thinking, well, how do I monitor this? How do I deploy them? How do I scale them? And I think that the best way to do that is with a little help from your friends. So I mean this in a couple of different ways. So the first one is through your tooling and through your processes. So your tools are your friends. So how can you lean on other things that aren't just you and yourself doing your work and your coworkers? How can you lean on things like tools and processes to enable you to make this a little bit more effective? And two, it's also through your community. So that's person friends or people friends. So how can you get help from resources outside of just yourself? So your tools and your community. So we'll talk tools first. So in other words, how can you work smarter and not harder? I'm pretty sure that that's thought leadership, by the way. So please feel free to add me to your list on LinkedIn as a thought leader. So we're going to start with safety first. So I think that safety and security is kind of the thing that we want to start with from the bottom up, right? So how can I keep myself safe and secure as I'm working with all these scalable systems? So if you're working with AWS, that starts with something like roles. So in other words, how can you and your service perform actions securely? So that's something like a service role. So what can your service perform on your behalf, like Access, Kinesis, or DynamoDB, or a user role. So that's a person. So what can I specifically do? So maybe I can add new IAM users, or maybe I can create new tables. Or you have a group, and that's how I can group users with the same permissions. But it's not just about your roles and what you and your service can do on your behalf, but you have to care about your secrets too. And there are different kinds of secrets, and it's probably worth a whole entire talk to just talk about secrets management, and lots of people have done it, and they've actually probably done it better than me, so we're going to just do one little summary slide about it. A couple words of advice, and Bridget talked about this really well yesterday too, but you want the principle of least privilege for your secrets and your keys as well. So don't share them between your services. Don't share them between your humans. Go for the principle of least privilege or least access. Where possible, store your keys somewhere else and then access them securely rather than just storing them as like environment variables right inside your container. But because this is a talk on tools, I don't want you to have to manage all of those things yourself. So lean on tools both to check your images for vulnerabilities and help you store those secrets. So I have a couple options there. So the goal of this talk ultimately is that people will walk away either having found out about a tool or an open source project or just thought about something that they hadn't thought about before. So here's a couple options that you could use to manage your tools. Tons of different options out there. You could use something like Vault or Aqua Microscanner or a security scan. There's so many options out there to help you be safe from the beginning and then help you store all of your personal secrets so that other people can't get to them. And everyone has secrets though, right? So you can't really, this isn't something that you can kind of get away with not thinking about it. Everyone has to think about it. So now that we're thinking about safety, we'll go from the bottom up again. So good development starts locally, right? Because everyone, and if you say that it's not you, then I know that you're lying. So if everyone, I think, has been in that situation before, right, where it worked on my machine, or I don't know why that doesn't worked on staging, or it's working in production, but I can't get it to work locally, so I don't really know what the problem is, right? And that's because our environments tend to drift apart. So your good development has to start locally, because that's how you get rid of things like production bugs, and how you eliminate things like, well, it worked on my machine. So some common approaches to this might be, so Vagrant, which is something that I used, an EC2 box with local access. But what you're really wanting to do, right, is keep a shared environment so that it's standardized, so that I can run the same thing locally as I can on staging or on production, so that I can test things myself in an environment that it's as close to possible as a production environment, so that I can get things really close that I can actually test. So it's not just, I built this locally and now I'm hoping that it works in the cloud. It's, I built and tested this locally in an environment that was as close to the cloud as possible. So some tools that might help you out. So I put Vagrant and Cloud9 there. If you're using Kubernetes, you can run things locally with Minikube. I can never figure out how to pronounce anything in the Kubernetes ecosystem, by the way. So kubectl, kubectl, kubecontrol. I can't figure it out. So I made a best guess at everything that I was supposed to be pronouncing on this slide. So if you disagree with me and you think it's kubectl, I'm pretty sure that I'm right. So from your local environment to your production, you probably want to interact with your containers through CLIs, right? So you don't want to be the person that's sitting there like, hang on, I have to deploy a new version. And then you type out every single command by yourself, right? You're using these CLIs, you're scripting around them, you're automating around them. Your CLI in a lot of cases, and this is a gross generalization, but it's 30 minutes, so needs must. So your CLI depends on probably the tool that you're using on the other end. So that's your orchestration platform. So we're going to look at ECS from Amazon and Kubernetes. I can say Kubernetes, by the way. I just can't say kubectl. So a couple of CLIs. So there's the AWS CLI. That's the official one. But there's also a bunch of unofficial ones. There's also a second official one. Not really sure why there's two. But the ECS CLI supports Docker Compose files, if that's the format that currently floats your boat. Two unofficial ones that I listed here, so the Fargate CLI and the Cold Brew CLI, both are community projects. And I am here to tell you, by the way, that it doesn't matter what tool you use. The tool that you use is the one that works for you, that you can maintain, that you can work with, that you're happy with. You don't want to just use what I'm using because it sounded cool. You don't want to use what he's using because it sounded cool. You want to use what actually works for you. So that's whatever you think that you can work with, what you can maintain, what you're comfortable with using. So if a community CLI works for you better, absolutely use a community CLI. If a tool that you wrote yourself works better, I mean, totally use it. It's what you can maintain and what you can scale and what you can work with. A few of the CLIs for Kubernetes, kubectl, not kubectl. Kops, which is like kubectl for clusters, can use it to manage your production infrastructure. Kubeadmin, or I don't know how other people are saying this now. Adam, probably, something crazy. Can help you bootstrap your production-ready clusters. Not production-ready, but still pretty cool, is Kubecorn, which will help you manage your production infrastructure. There's a lot of tools out there, right? And ultimately, you use the one that works for you. But it's not something that you maybe want to be doing everything by hand. And we're going to talk about when you want to do things by hand in just a second. But you don't want to be doing everything by hand. So I'm interacting with my clusters via CLIs. Now what? I have to automate. So everybody say it with me. So no artisanal containers. So you want to treat your infrastructure as code just like your actual code. So automate and template things out. You want to make everything repeatable and portable. So that means not execing into things and installing packages and then calling it good. You want to make things repeatable, reproducible. You can build them directly from repositories, but make it part of your CI/CD process. After that, you want to automate your AWS. So CloudFormation, that's from Amazon. Extremely JSON-y. Amazon loves JSON, and especially if you can nest the JSON, that's what makes it good. If you don't like writing CloudFormation templates, there's some snippets there. It ends up looking something like this, with a lot of comments in there. A less JSON-y option would be Terraform, so created by HashiCorp. Thanks, y'all. Open source, either one works. So ultimately, they're both doing resource management. And probably the most common question that I get after things like this is, but which one am I supposed to use? And which one is the right one for me to use? And it's whichever one you're happy with, right? So I work at Amazon, and I use Terraform in production. And that's OK, right? It's whatever I could manage my infrastructure with. That's OK. Probably the main difference, CloudFormation does planning and execution in the same step. You just run your CloudFormation stack. Terraform does it in 2 steps. So you have to plan and you have to execute. Whichever one works for your process is the right answer here, or how much you like JSON. And I know some of you like JSON, but I have a hard time with nested JSON, by the way, because it's like, well, I did this, and it's really awesome, but now I'm playing Find the Bracket. And never been a big fan of a game of Find the Bracket. So here's a Terraform example. These are just snippets, by the way. They are not actually things that you can apply. That's just what they look like. So you've automated, right? You're using CLIs. You've thought about security. How do you know that everything's working? So monitoring and observability. So this is what helps you debug and then understand your system. And it's been really cool over the last maybe year and a half, 2 years, because you've seen more and more people not just do logs. So how do I find out what's literally happening in my application right now? So console.log, whatever, hi if you're me, or some sort of swear probably if you were getting really frustrated. But you've seen this kind of upsurge in people that were trying to understand what was going on in your system. So not just an output, but what's actually happening, and why does this happen when this other thing happens? And I think that's important, right? Because I think Charity Majors has been one of the bigger talkers on this recently. So she runs something called honeycomb.io. And I think the way that she put it was that, do you really want to figure out what's wrong when you get paged? Or do you want to understand what's happening in your system way before that? How can I understand what's happening before it gets to the point where it's actually broken and it's woken me up? How can I understand that first? So beyond just logs, I want actual, usable, helpful information about what's happening with my system. This will be, in fact, the title of my memoir, other than things that you eat in an airport don't count. So peanut M&Ms. They put everything inside M&Ms now, by the way. Peanuts, peanut butter, pretzels, rice, like crispy rice pieces. Anyway, it's great. So a couple of things to think about, right? So you want to reduce the noise. So if you're getting paged for something and it's not like an actual disaster, it probably shouldn't be waking a human up. Also, you want to page only on things that require immediate emergency attention. And everyone has gotten a page. Anyone that's been on call before has gotten the page and said, this is fine. I can take care of it when I get to work. And it should not have woken you up if you can take care of it when you get to work. You also need all of it. You don't just want monitoring, you want observability. So you want to be able to see inside your actual system, not just get just the output. And you want to be making sure that you're asking and answering the right questions. So I think Fog Creek started this, but the 5 reasons why. So not just why did I get paged? It's like, oh, I got paged because Nginx went down. And it's like, OK, but why did Nginx go down? And it was, well, we got something that we weren't able to handle. It's like, OK, so why did you get input that Nginx wasn't able to handle? And you keep working back until you found the actual root cause. So make sure that you're asking and answering the right questions and that you have the tools to find the right answers, but also to find the right questions. Because this is still a talk on tools, even though I wandered off in a different direction, you don't have to go at it alone. So there's lots of things out there that will help you make sense of what's going on. But it has to be beyond just logs. It has to be beyond, and everyone also has had those logs where you're like, sure, I'm logging. I have 10 terabytes of unstructured log files in S3. Those aren't logs. That doesn't help you understand what's going on. It doesn't help you solve a problem. It just is a big dump of information. So make sure that you have usable information, usable things that you can take action from, things that you can actually understand. But here's the caveat. You have to use the right tool. So not the tool that I'm using, not the tool that he's using or she's using. You have to use the right tool. And that means that you don't have to do everything yourself when you don't have to, but it's still OK to get fancy on your own if there isn't a tool that works for you. So there were people doing observability before there was observability tools. There have been people that wrote their own log driver. There have been people that wrote their own resource management systems. That's probably why we have HashiCorp, right? So it's OK to build something yourself if there's not something out there that works for you. It's OK to get fancy on your own. It's OK to customize on your own. What I'm saying is don't reinvent the wheel when you don't have to. So not everyone has to write their own log driver. Not everyone has to write their own custom deployment infrastructure. It's OK to both use tools that already exist to help you, but it's also OK to write your own if you don't find one that fills that gap for you. So that might be something like tweaking your load balancer settings and auto-scaling group settings to get your deployments to be faster. My new thing is overlapping screenshots, by the way, because I couldn't find a slide big enough. It might mean bringing a custom AMI to AWS. It might mean that you resort to configuring everything with Bash and EC2 user data. This girl. I have not yet met a problem, by the way, that Bash and user data couldn't solve. So do what I'm saying, maybe, and not what I actually do in production. So that's also thought leadership. User data is good for everything. So you can start services there. You can configure your environment there. Hypothetically, you could support Docker flags there that AWS doesn't support in the UI. This is being recorded, obviously, but I'm still going to show you. Hi, AWS PR. So I can just echo whatever I want straight into etc sysconfig docker. This is extremely crufty, by the way. So you can totally do this. But that's what user data is for, right? And I've done things in user data that I couldn't do in the UI, and that was OK, because I needed something, and the tool that I was currently using wasn't enabling me to do that. And that's OK for all of you, too. It's OK to do things that aren't supported in the UI. I mean, safety first. Well, I'm not sure that user data is safety first, but safety first. So do what you need to do to get the result that you want, but promise me you'll use your powers for good. This is my favorite show, by the way. OK, so remember when I said at the beginning that there was 2 ways that you could get some help, right? So here's number 2. Your best resource is the community. It's all these people that are sitting next to you. It's those people that you're talking to on Twitter or in literally 10,000 Slack channels. So many Slack channels. It's people like that. It's your community. It's your peers. It's the user groups. It's the meetups. It's the Slack channels. It's the Twitter accounts. Kubernetes and AWS and the HashiCorp services and all these open source projects, they all have extremely vibrant communities and resources. So you have people writing these blog posts. You have people giving talks. You have people running user groups and meetups. They're all out there, and they're here to help you, right? And the best people to learn from, it's not just talks like this. It's not just talks like the rest of HashiDays. It's people that are working on the same kinds of problems that you are. So talk to your peers. Talk to your colleagues, talk to your internet friends, write a blog yourself, give a talk yourself, come to conferences like this one. But I guarantee you that absolutely everyone out there, you're not working on a problem that no one else is also working on, right? So lean on your peers, talk to people. If you're working on something and you're like, I think I'm kind of stuck, right? I don't understand how to fix this. Chances are someone out there is also working on something really similar, and that you can learn from them, they can learn from you, that you can all share things. And everyone also, by the way, don't be that person that goes to Stack Overflow and they ask a question, and then they just comment back 7 weeks later and they say, never mind, fixed it. Post the solution. Don't be that person. Everyone out there is working on things that you can learn from and that they can learn from you. So write about your experiences. I got this job, by the way, because I wrote a blog post. and I wrote a really annoying GitHub issue that's still there. So someday I'm going to fix it myself. I just got access to the repo, so it's on. But I got a job because of a blog post. And a lot of people out here that speak at conferences, they speak at conferences because they worked on an open source tool, or they wrote a blog post, or they wrote a talk, or they went to a conference and met someone at a user group. And that's how people get started sharing their experiences. So if you don't know how to get started, or if you're struggling, ask for help. Ask me, ask your internet friends, ask your real-life friends. So resources to get you started, because this is about tools. Find a meetup, join a community call, come to a conference, try a user group. Again, so many Slack channels. So this is just about it for me. I have had my half an hour. So I will wrap up. Thank you all for coming. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Hashy days. I think we're going straight into the next talk after this, but if you want to ask any questions, I will be hanging out around the back for a little bit before I head out. So thank you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your conference.